Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Sports Ball Talk Show, joined by Frank and Gian, of course. There is a ton of stuff to talk about today, but before I get into that...
Huge breaking news.
But before that, I just want to say, hey, for breakfast this morning, I ate a pound of bacon, and that was it. So, first order of business is that Sean...
Was it General Tutty from the Commanders?
Huh?
Was that bacon from General Tutty?
I forgot he existed. I hate you for reminding me of that. No.
That is our bum of the week. Our bum of the week is the Washington Commanders because you are a trash organization and you have a trash mascot.
You know what?
You are the epitome of bum of the week. When we look at people to be bum of the week, you are who is the bum of the week.
I'll allow it.
Every week.
General Tutty, Washington Commanders. We have no one else because no one really did anything that bad. It is you, General Tutty, and you, Washington Commanders, because you are a horrible franchise with a horrible mascot. Anyway.
Exactly.
Anyway. Breaking news.
On to breaking news.
Sean Peyton has been officially traded to the Broncos. Now, this was not really a big shocker as everyone kind of figured he was going to be going to the Broncos, but it is now official. He's traded for a first and a second rounder. In exchange, the Saints are giving up Sean Payton and a third rounder. So, Broncos got Sean Payton for next year. What do you guys think that does? Let's say all else remains the same for the Broncos, but they're healthier next year. Let's say like Russell Wilson doesn't deal with injury, none of their receivers are hurt, their defense is healthy. What do you think happens after there's Sean Payton? How many more wins do you think they get with Sean Payton at the helm instead of Nathaniel?
Gian, what are you thinking?
Well, first thing comes to mind, hopefully by next season, the entire receiving core is healthy. No more issues for Jerry Jeudy, although he played at the end of the season. No more issues for KJ Hamler. And Cortland Sutton, no issues with them. They'll be healthy. But more importantly, we all know Sean Payton worked with the Saints. You know how awesome he made Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. We have Javonte Williams on this team. And let me tell you, that kid is a stud. If he comes back fully healthy, ready for next season, primes that O-line, perfects Russell Wilson. Because remember, Russell Wilson is also coming back from a finger injury as well. Although he was a bum most of the season.
He had a pectoral injury as well.
Near the end.
He had a chest injury at one point.
Yeah, pectoral injury. Yeah. But we may be able to see like a different type of Broncos offense. Maybe the one that we were all anticipating this season come next season. Because let me tell you something. Nathaniel Hackett is an absolute hack.
Yep, I'm gonna say they get 10 wins.
Sean Payton?
I'm gonna play it a little conservative, say 10 wins next season. So far, we'll make physical predictions closer to next season with everything said and done. But given that we don't have any other free agent signings, injuries, stuff like that with other teams, I'm gonna say 10 wins. I think it's a safe bet because everyone's gonna be healthy, hopefully, and then Sean Payton. I mean, that's next season is gonna be a big one for the Broncos. If they still disappoint, then it is just over for them. But I'll say 10 wins. And maybe
I'm looking at the picks that they have right now, and they traded away their 29th overall pick, so they can't really do anything to replace Brad Chubb on that defensive line, which they really need to shore up. So they're right now looking at mid to early third-round picks, and the draft that I was looking at has them taking an inside linebacker and kind of shoring some things up. They have Baron Browning, who looked kind of good this year, and I think if they pick up maybe some defensive players in the free agent market, that would be good. I'm gonna agree with you guys. I think they get 10 to 11 wins. I don't know that Sean Payton can turn this around quite in one, year. I think if they had gotten Sean McVay, I would be very confident in saying they'd get at least 12 wins. But, I mean, Sean Payton struggled a little bit on the Saints, and the Saints had a very similar team, but I think that I would argue that defense that he had on the Saints was more skilled than the one he has on the Broncos right now. Now, the Broncos have their defense, I think, actually was really good last year, where they were holding people, to under 20 points pretty much consistently. But it was the offense that was the problem. So being an offensive-minded coach and having coached someone similar to Russell Wilson and Drew Brees, I think that he will be able to get out a lot more But I don't think it comes down to his coaching. I think it comes down to how does Russell Wilson play. And this season, I didn't see from Russell Wilson anything that made me confident in the fact that he's going to turn it around this year. I think Nathaniel Hackett was a big problem, but I think Russell Wilson was an even bigger problem. And I think you can't coach that out of somebody. So if you have just an absolutely toxic quarterback, like people on the Seahawks were insinuating about Russell Wilson, then having a coach that is as good as Sean Payton isn't going to change that. And who knows, maybe they get rid of Russell Wilson and they bring in, a Trey Lance or somebody like that, for the season. Or maybe they try and get a quarterback in, the third round. I'm really excited to see what Sean Payton does, and what he's going to bring to the table. But I would agree with you guys. I think probably the range is going to be 9 to 11 wins. I don't see them winning more than that.
Yeah, I think I agree with that for the most part. The only thing would be is if Russell Wilson ends up playing really good ball, then they get more. And I think it kind of depends, like you said, on how effective Sean Payton can be with Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson had a lot of issues. Obviously, there were some Nathaniel Hackett issues, but Russell Wilson was a big piece of the reason that they were not good on the offense. And so seeing what comes with that is going to be great to see next year, and what they do with their draft picks. Their defense is still going to be good. They've got some stud offensive pieces. It's just a matter of being able to make it all work together, which Sean Payton might be able to do. But we'll move on to another piece of breaking news, another big head coach signing. The Texans signed DeMeco Ryans from the 49ers. Now, this comes a couple days after the 49ers lose in the NFC Championship game, which I'll get into shortly. But DeMeco Ryans is he's a football guru. Assuming that he's as good at head coaching as he is as a def coordinator, he will make that Texans team a force to be reckoned with next season. Especially the Texans do have some good defensive players. It's more so their offense that couldn't get cooking last year. But we'll see. Got a lot of draft picks too. If he can come in there and change the culture a little bit and get that winning mindset instilled in some of those young defensive players, get that offense going. Maybe they draft a quarterback with the first overall pick. Maybe they get Bryce Young, something like that, and proves to be a stud. That Texans team could be a challenge for a wild card spot or possibly even the AFC South next year. So that'll be interesting to see. But I'll ask the same thing. How many wins do you think the Texans get next year? Obviously, this is not knowing their draft picks yet as well. But what do you think they do just off of signing DeMeco Ryans as their new head coach? What do you think that does for the team?
I think they'll be a little better than they were this year, but I don't think they're going to get more than 7 wins. And honestly, same goes with the Broncos. I'm not too sure how well of the system they go. Obviously, they had a lot. Obviously, they had a lot of issues on offense, but they have a monster of a running back in Dameon Pierce. Davis Mills seems to be fitting the offense to some degree. That's not to say he's the best and he's the answer to that offense, but I'm not saying he's the worst. He made things work where he could. I don't know if Brandon Cook stays or leaves. There are some issues there, but they do have some pretty awesome offensive players there, I believe it's Nico Collins, who runs parallel with Brandon Cooks. It's just a wait and see type of game, see what they do with the picks. But I still don't think this Texans team, despite the fact that they have very good cornerbacks, they're not going to make it more than 7 wins, and that's just because their defense against the run is just abysmal. But we'll have to wait and see.
I think the same thing. I think that it's going to take a couple years to build with what DeMeco Ryans' vision is, but I think that they probably get 6-7 wins maybe if they end up pulling it together pretty well. But I think that they're a team that if they keep DeMeco Ryans and they draft well, this is a team that will be contending in a couple of years, at least for a playoff spot, possibly even a playoff run. And that can be said about most teams, but the Texans, with a lot of draft capital and a genius head coach, at least from what we've seen him do with the defense, assuming, like I said, it translates to being a head coach, because it doesn't always, but assuming it does, then he's got a great future with the Texans. What about you, Frank? How many wins do you think they get?
So I'm just looking at their draft picks. I am of the thought that they are going to take C.J. Stroud, that they're not going to draft Bryce Young. with that second overall pick. And then with 11, I've seen some people saying that they're going to take that wide receiver out of LSU, or out of USC, Addison. I forget what his name is, but I would like to see them take Jackson Smith-Njigba with that pick, and I think that locks down their offense. That was a prolific duo at Ohio State, and both of those, when Smith-Njigba was healthy, were predicted to win the Heisman early on in the season, and then obviously Njigba got injured, and that kind of derailed things for him, and you've seen his draft stock just absolutely plummet. So people are now saying, they think that he's going to go in the second round, mid to late, just because, they haven't seen him play in a year. And if that's the case, I think that they could get, maybe somebody else at 11 and then go and take him at 33 then, if they're really confident that no one's going to take Smith-Njigba in, the first round. 33 is not a bad pick to have in that second round. So you can really shore up those needs that they have on the offense with those first 3 picks and then build your team around him. I don't think they're going to stay with Davis Mills. I don't think he did enough this season to warrant a starting job still in the NFL. I think you need someone who's electric and who has more playmaking ability than Davis Mills has. CJ Stroud definitely has that. I know he lost to Georgia, but that was hardly his fault. I would say that, falls on the defense of Ohio State more than it falls on him. He is great in the pocket, and he has, running skills. He's very similar, I think, personally, to what we saw from Deshaun Watson, where he's just a absolute stud passer, and he can get it done on the ground, but he prefers to do it passing. So that would be, kind of my comparison for CJ Stroud. That being said, I'm going to say they get 9 wins, 8 to 9 wins this season. I think they're a contender, and depending on really what they do in the draft, I really can see them doing well. This is the other thing that they could do. They could go get Justin Fields or someone like that as their quarterback. I know that's kind of a totally crazy out of left field suggestion, but I think that Justin Fields would fit really well in that team. And the Bears are just they need to do something different there, and I think they're ready to kind of blow the team up and deal kind of all the pieces away that they have. So I think that would make sense for Justin Fields to go there, and then they can take someone else with that second, overall pick, or maybe trade, the 11th for Justin Fields or something.
They could go.
I'm not sure, but
the Bears could go get someone like Lamar Jackson. The Bears are going to be a team that I think we talk about a lot this offseason because they have about $100 million in cap to spend, which is a ridiculous amount, especially with the cap going up, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah, the cap's going up.
But also because they have a high draft pick. And so they have a good draft pick. They have a lot of cap space. And they do have some pretty good young players there. So there's someone that we're going to talk about a lot this offseason. We'll save that for later this offseason as they start making moves. But we're going to go and move on. We'll talk about the cap space. The cap space is going up from $208.2 million to $224.8 million, which is about a $16 million increase for every team to spend. So this helps some teams get out of the negative, like the Bills are going to go from negative $17 million to negative $1 million. So they are kind of at a break-even point now instead of being in the negative. It gives some teams like the Bengals and the Chargers a little bit more money to spend on their quarterbacks and then still have some money to go other places. So it's interesting to see it go up. Obviously, that's going to happen. We kind of figured out what it's going to go up every year, but $16 million kind of seems to account for the rise in quarterback contracts, that you can go ahead and spend this money on your quarterbacks and still have your remaining cap space on other pieces. So we'll see what happens, but it is very important to know how this affects certain teams, because now it gives the Chiefs about $32 million in cap space, the Bengals about $70 million in cap space, which a lot of this is ahead of big contract signings, but we'll see where that takes us. But it's definitely worth noting that the cap space is going up. It'll be interesting to see what teams do with their offseason, having that much more money in cap space in it.
I would love to see the Bears do well And I think with the amount of cap space that they have, I think they could go get a defensive tackle like Javon Hargrave and then an offensive tackle like Orlando Brown, right, which kind of fixes two huge holes that they had. Now, unfortunately, they did trade away Roquan Smith, which I don't think they should have done because what they got in return for that was not enough. I think they definitely could have built a defense around him, and if they hadn't traded him, I would be a lot more confident in what they're going to do this year. But
the other piece of it is that, especially if Rodgers leaves Green Bay, but even if he doesn't, it seems like that's going to be a pretty weak division. The Lions are on the rise, right. I'll say that, but I think that the Vikings kind of fall off a little bit next year. I think they kind of go into a blow-up scenario where they don't really know what's wrong and kind of make too many cuts and signings. So I think it's going to be a Lions-Bears division next year, assuming they spend their money right, which is going to be very fun to see, I think. I still want the Lions to win it out overall in that division, but I think the Bears will definitely be a potential playoff team. You know, they could get 10, 11 wins, and it wouldn't surprise me, assuming they spend this money well, but we'll see. Moving on, though, Tom Brady is not going to the Dolphins. He could go somewhere else. I think that now my pick is probably the Raiders just because I don't know where else he'd go. There's so many quarterbacks in this market now with Brady, Rodgers, the slew of Niners quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, that are open for potential new spots. But the Dolphins said that they're sticking with Tua for next year, which I don't necessarily hate that move. Assuming they can keep him healthy, then I think that's a great move. I think Tua, being able to have him for a lot longer, and whenever you saw him play, he was very good, I think is a good decision. But that leaves just one less team open that was in the front running for a lot of these guys to go to next year. So we'll see where a lot of these guys go. It's going to end up that some of these guys either stay with what they're doing or go to a bad situation because there's just not that many teams that can afford some of these big-time quarterbacks next year. But what do you think, Gian? What are you happy with the fact that the Dolphins are going to stick with Tua and especially not get Tom Brady?
Yeah, I've never been a Brady fan myself personally, and although it might have looked like we needed him, if we're going to stick with Tua, which I am happy about and a little weary about, please protect that guy. I can't bear seeing him get hit. So in this offseason, I'm expecting the Dolphins to invest in their O-line and make that more robust, and that way they could improve their run game. So in a way, this does make sense, and I'm actually kind of happy because Tua, I do see him as the future for the Dolphins. He went from zero to hero for me. With regard to Brady, there's not many teams that are willing to pick him up, but I mean, I could possibly again, the Raiders are still up in the air. I feel like Lamar is going to still end up going. If the Ravens don't re-sign him, Lamar is going to go to the Falcons. Yeah. But do you think if Lamar goes to the Falcons, there's a chance that Brady goes to the Ravens?
No.
Super
there's
tight end and
there's
Mark
no
Andrews,
shot.
even for a cheap contract.
I just don't think that they're going to win if they get Brady. Like, I think he goes to a team that thinks he can win, and the Niners are now in that conversation.
Right. I think the Niners, I was just going to say that. The Niners are exactly where he wants to go. He grew up in California. He's a California guy. He's said in the past that he wants to play for a California team. The Niners fit that win now mentality that they don't even need to go out and get anyone. They have a team where all they were missing was a healthy quarterback, and Tom Brady can provide them with that, for the first half of that season, because they're not going to have Jimmy G. They're probably going to trade Trey Lance, or if they don't, they can have Trey Lance and Brock Purdy sit behind Tom Brady and learn from the best, and then next, not this upcoming season, but the season after that, they have two quarterbacks who can duke it out after Tom Brady, retires on a Super Bowl high from, winning one with the 49ers, and they're set for the next 8 to 9 years with either Brock Purdy or Trey Lance, right? Who they spent so much on Trey Lance that I think it makes sense that they get Brady so that he can learn from Brady and learn from the best, and do the recovery that he needs.
I think that's exactly what happens. I think that they get rid of Garoppolo, which they were probably going to do anyway. I think they keep Lance and Purdy, but if it were me, I would keep Purdy and get rid of Lance as well, because I think Purdy is the future of that team, especially as well as he played this season, and then him learning under Brady, which they're very similar play styles, I think would be very beneficial. Whereas Trey Lance, obviously he can learn from Brady, but he's not as much of a similar style as Brock Purdy, as in just staying in the pocket and passing. But Tom Brady's also a very sturdy quarterback. They're not going to have the injuries list that they had this year with Tom Brady under helm. But we're going to save some of that because we're going to get into the championship game soon. But we have two more things to talk about. First off, it's a little fun little challenge that I'm going to pull up real quick. It is a FanDuel challenge they posted, and basically they said, which field goal would you attempt? And this is just, I thought it'd be fun to talk about and bet what we could do. So 20-yarder for $100, 30-yarder for $1,000, 40-yarder for $10,000, or a 50-yarder for $100,000. With no practice or warm up, I'm taking the 30-yarder for $1,000. If I could go out, hit a few balls first, give me a day of warming up, I'm nailing a 40-yarder for $10,000, no problem. Gian, what do you think you could do?
If I had time to warm up, I would nail a 50-yarder. I feel like I could.
Bold.
Wait, how much is a 50-yarder?
$100,000.
Hey.
I'd go for the 40-yarder because the thing is, in college at the University of Toledo, I actually was one of the halftime people that came out to kick a field goal, and I hit a 30-yard field goal for a $150 gift card to Dave's Running Shop. So I had a pair of running shoes for my sophomore year, and that was pretty neat. But yeah, I would probably do the 40-yarder because I think if I hit a 30-yarder with no practice in athletic shoes, then I could probably hit a 40-yarder, and yeah, I would definitely just want that money.
Yeah,
and I would be okay if I missed it. So
yeah, that's why I say the 30-yarder is the safest for me, just because I don't kick field goals. I know, like, if you send me out there for a 30-yarder, I'm going to hit it. 40-yarder, I would just need to practice a little bit to figure out where to hit the ball, but I know I have the leg for it, and I know that I've played soccer, which I know kicking a soccer ball is different than kicking a football, but in terms of like the motion of your leg, kicking is the same. It's just a matter of where on your foot you're hitting it, and so I feel like with a day's warm-up or something like that, I could hit a 40-yarder. But we'll move on to a weird question. Why the absolute hell is Tyler Huntley in the Pro Bowl?
That's a great question, Ethan. I'm glad you brought that up because
before you get that, I just want to say
that honestly, that was the worst news of the entire day.
I want to say
it ruined my day. I was so happy about Sean Payton, and then I saw Tyler Huntley got picked for the Pro Bowl, and I said Jacoby Brissett played better than Tyler Huntley. Tyler Huntley threw 2 touchdowns and like 4 interceptions in 6 games. It was disgusting.
2 passing touchdowns the entirety he played, which obviously he didn't play all season, but still. The reason this happened is because people don't want to be in the Pro Bowl. So Josh Allen is sitting out, and so they had to pick an alternate. He's air quotes set out because of an elbow injury, but he's just going to play golf. He doesn't want to be in the Pro Bowl, which I completely understand. Like if I just lost in a big playoff game,
this is a terrible format. It's a terrible format for the Pro Bowl. No one is going to show up. The only reason some people are going to show up is because it's Vegas. Who wants to watch flag football with a bunch of people who don't even put any effort into playing when it's a regular game anyways, and they're just going to half-ass this even more?
Go ahead, Gian.
I'm kidding. All jokes aside, no, I agree. I mean, the flag football aspect of it, if at that point, just bring the best flag football players around. I mean, don't waste the football players' time.
Well, here's the thing: it's not flag football this year. It's not flag football like it was last year. They're going back to like a skills competition type thing that they used to do. But the reason that I think
there is going to be a flag football game.
There is going to be a flag football game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
it's going to be the Mannings
but I know they're
coaching
doing
against each other.
I know they're doing like a skills competition, which I do like. I prefer that method because you kind of get to showcase some of your skill, and I think that's cool. But the reason it's stupid is because you got like guys like Pete Davidson are involved. Why the hell is Pete Davidson involved in this? Him and Snoop Dogg. I don't have any problem with Snoop Dogg and Pete Davidson, but like, why? That's not football. Like,
it's like nobody cares about that. You're not gonna.
You're making this some like Hollywood media. Haha, let's go watch this thing. No, let's just play. Like, let's have a skills competition where you like make cool throws and like try to get accuracy challenges, cool catch challenges. But the fact you want Pete Davidson to be in there, it's like thinking about it from Josh Allen's perspective. It's like, I just lost for the 3rd year in a row to a team that I should be beating, and I'm getting dogged on social media, and now I'm going to go get coached by Pete Davidson. Pete Davidson? No. I'm going to fake an elbow injury and go play golf.
my time on that.
And guess what, Josh Allen? I agree with you. I would do the same thing if I were you, Josh Allen. But that's why Tyler Huntley is in the freaking Pro Bowl. So, one, the Pro Bowl is stupid. Tyler Huntley is in there over guys like Jacoby Brissett. Even Kenny Pickett. He, like, for a rookie, he played great.
Yeah.
He should be in there over freaking...
There are so many people who deserved it
so
over
many guys.
Tyler Huntley.
Jacoby Brissett, I think, is probably top of that.
Skylar Thompson, third string of Miami, should be there.
No, not Skylar Thompson.
No.
You're not getting that one.
With that performance against the Bills? No, with the performance against the Bills.
Who's the quarterback? Who's the quarterback for the freaking Titans? He threw more passing touchdowns than Tyler Huntley.
Ryan
He threw more passing touchdowns. Like,
I mean, no, I agree. All of the
What are we
mid-level
doing?
quarterbacks in the AFC, like Kenny Pickett, Mac Jones, Ryan Tannehill,
Mac Jones deserves to be in it.
Yeah.
What is he
Mac
doing?
Jones, for sure, dude.
I like Mac. I think Mac Jones is a good quarterback, but this year he just played kind of average. But yeah, no, I agree. It's stupid.
At this point, send Zach Wilson to the Pro Bowl.
Joe Flacco, dude. I prefer Joe Flacco than Tyler Huntley because at least when he played, he had four touchdowns in like 4 minutes, dude. It's just stupid. I don't understand why we do these certain things in the NFL that we do. It's just to make money, and I get that. But like, no one's going to watch a product that has Tyler Huntley over Josh Allen or whoever else would have been in there. It's just not gonna. I'm not gonna watch Tyler.
No
Huntley.
one knows who Tyler Huntley is outside of 20 fans in Baltimore.
Yeah, and people who watch NFL for a living like we do. We get paid millions of dollars to record this show. That's why we know who Tyler Huntley is.
Top G money.
If we didn't make that money, we wouldn't know who Tyler Huntley is. All right, that's just
right. Exactly.
Exactly.
But anyway, we'll jokes aside, like Tyler Huntley's not a bad guy. I just don't know why he's in the Pro Bowl. But we'll move on. We're going to talk about the championship games because that's obviously a topic of conversation this week. We're going to talk a long time about it. But I wanted to get the other stuff out of the way first because I know this is going to be the bulk of our conversation. But also, let's shy away from who we think is going to win the Super Bowl because we're going to talk about that next week because there's a bye week between the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that next week. Just analysis of these past couple weeks. Let's start off with the NFC Championship game, Eagles-Niners. I can go first because I am angry. I had the Niners winning it. And reasonably so because anytime I make my predictions, I always preface it with assuming no injuries because you can't predict injuries. The Niners lost Brock Purdy, and then they lose their fourth-string quarterback, and then they lose and they lose him too. So the Niners lost because they had no quarterback play. The whole thing with them having to throw Brock Purdy back in there with a UCL tear because they can't have an emergency quarterback, throwing Kyle Juszczyk, Christian McCaffrey just to finish the game is ridiculous. Having to put in Brock Purdy when he's hurt and losing 4 quarterbacks in one season is ridiculous. And I don't think it shows that the Eagles are capable. I'm not going to say the Eagles aren't a good team because they're still winning, but I don't think that it shows they're better than the Niners by any means at all because they had so much more time on offense and were able to play a lot more safe knowing that the Niners were not going to be able to get a touchdown on offense given that 4 of their starting quarterbacks were hurt. So I just don't like it. I hate it, and I don't want the Eagles in the Super Bowl. I didn't want it, and I hate it. I don't like it. But they won because of this. So what the hell, 49ers? This is why you're going to go get Tom Brady and go on a run next year. But, Gian, give me your thoughts on it, on the NFC Championship game.
Honestly, the 49ers defense did as good as they could. I mean, given the circumstances, there was a lot of turnovers as a result of faulty quarterback play. Not because the quarterbacks were playing bad, but because they ended up getting hurt. So the turnovers hurt the 49ers. They had no time at all. There was a really bad call in the beginning of the game that set the momentum in favor of the Eagles with Devontae Smith catching. Right. And that's another thing, bad ref play throughout everything. But like Devontae Smith, which I thought was a monster of a catch, no one really thought to look at it, and they hurried up the play. Obviously, the play was dead after they set up the next play, but that should have been at least looked at right before the next play. Obviously hit the ground, and that set them up for a tutty. I feel like I didn't really like how they kept lining up the same tight end to hold up against Hassan Reddick. I'd put a bigger guy there just because he kept breaking through every single time. And then going after the quarterback. And shout out to Hassan Reddick for playing your heart out. You were an absolute beast that game. But here's the thing: after seeing that, after seeing Purdy get hurt, you would think, all right, we will We'll make sure that the O-line's robust. We'll go back to our schemes and not any ticky-tack plays. And they still just kept getting beat at the O-line again and again. Checkdowns for screens to Deebo Samuel, demolished. Trying to run it with C-Mac, couldn't get through. Quarterbacks trying to look for an open lane, perfect coverage, they break through the O-line. I don't know what it was, but I felt like the O-line wasn't playing. Albeit the Eagles' defensive line is good, I don't feel like the O-line was playing at their best. And as a result, it ended up getting both of your quarterbacks hurt, and any chance for the Super Bowl at that point eliminated. I was very unhappy with how they put Purdy back out. At that point of the game, you guys were already down a good amount. I would rest him for next season because he's the future of your franchise. I wouldn't risk a player's health.
That's the problem is they didn't have any other quarterbacks because they had 4 people sign at quarterback and they all got hurt, and that's why I brought up the emergency QB situation. Because during COVID, when all the games were what they were, the Broncos, all 4 of their quarterbacks got sick, and so they were able to take a wide receiver and throw him in as an emergency quarterback. He was absolutely horrible, but they were able to do that. They are not able to do that right now, and that's why Brock Purdy had to go back out, and he literally could not throw the ball. It was a run play every single play, and that's why obviously the O-line was horrible, but the Eagles also knew they were going to run it every play because they had a guy with a torn UCL at quarterback, and so the game was completely over. But yeah, the O-line selling as hard as they did by allowing all those sacks and all that pressure and all those hits on the quarterback is what led to that whole thing. But not being able to put in someone else and making Brock Purdy go back out there because the other guy had a concussion. It's not like he could go play. Ridiculous. They need to be able to They need to bring back an emergency QB situation because situations like that where you have 4 quarterbacks get hurt for a season, you can't just go call up a guy mid-game and say, hey, Ryan Fitzpatrick, you want to come back for one more game for us? Like come out of retirement or something? You can't do that. You need to be able to throw in someone like Kyle Juszczyk or CMC at emergency QB just for the rest of the game. Because you know you're going to lose at that point. You're not going to just completely give up and forfeit, but you know you're going to lose. And so it's a balance of like making sure your guys are healthy, but also they had to play someone. And I just hated that whole situation. And I like the response afterwards because Brock Purdy said he felt so bad. He's like, I felt like I had to do this for the older guys that are here. He's like, I'm a rookie. I got plenty of time, but some of these older guys don't. And they were like, you know what, Brock, you got us here. It was the garbage situation of you tearing your UCL, but like you got us here. All the appreciation, all the respect and love for each other's teammates. I loved that whole thing of it, but the game was just horrible. I hated watching that after that happened. But that's how it was. So now the Eagles are in the Super Bowl, and I don't feel like they've proved a lot. Like obviously, I'm not going to say they're a bad team because it's not their fault they've had an easy schedule, and it's not their fault they keep playing against hurt teams. But you can't say that they've proved themselves to be the best team in the NFL yet. If they win the Super Bowl, then yes, they are. But they haven't proved it enough yet to make me say, okay, the Eagles are the team. Whereas, like, the Niners had some tough games this season. The Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, they all had tough games this season. They all played each other. They all had a tough playoff road. The Eagles didn't really. I mean, they played easy teams. I don't know. I'm not sold on the Eagles yet.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. As much as I don't like Philly as a team and a city, I'm not going to say it's their fault that I don't believe in them at this point just because when you play like basically JV teams every week and in the Super Bowl you're playing teams that don't even have a quarterback. Like they literally can't even throw the ball because their quarterback just beat up. You haven't proved to me anything. So we'll see coming into the Super Bowl, but we'll get into the analysis of that next week. But let's move on to the AFC Championship game because that had a lot more to talk about. I'll start.
And I'm mad about this game, so Ethan, please go ahead.
Hey, here's what I'm going to say about the AFC Championship.
I would like time to respond.
Switched.
Here's what I'll say. Chiefs! It was always the Chiefs. The Chiefs beat the Bengals. The Chiefs beat Joe Burrow in Burrowhead Stadium. The mayor, we're going to get a paternity test on Joe Burrow and see if he's Patrick Mahomes' dad. Fuck you! The Chiefs beat you, and you deserved it. The Bengals were so overhyped. We're 3-0 against Patrick Mahomes. Guess what? You're 0-3 against the Browns. That's embarrassing. At least the Chiefs losing to the Bengals, it's a good team. The Bengals are ass. Joe Burrow threw 2 picks. He was making horrible calls, horrible throws. Not that Joe Burrow's a bum. He still played well overall, but he made some horrible calls, horrible plays that game. Patrick Mahomes on one foot, on one ankle, with a broken ankle, played better than Joe Burrow, made the throws he needed to, and beat the Bengals, proving that it is not Burrowhead, it is Arrowhead. They are the top dogs in the AFC, going to their third Super Bowl in the last 4 years. Chiefs dynasty, Chiefs on top. Patrick Mahomes is better than Joe Burrow. Any one-liner you can think of about the Chiefs and the Bengals, with the Chiefs being on top, the Chiefs being better, is in my head right now. Chiefs! Now go ahead, Frank. Go ahead and give me your take on the ref call being horrible, and I'm going to defend it.
I put these glasses on just so I could take them off and shake them at Ethan for shame of his absolutely atrocious take on this game. This game was influenced like no other game by the refs. I am not the kind of person who's going to say that the NFL is rigged, because I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think that there is just atrocious ref calling, whether it's in the NFL or in the NBA, and we can talk about that later, because obviously LeBron just made headlines with his whole, tantrum on the floor against the Celtics, and but I think that it's indicative of a larger issue where maybe because sports betting is legal, these people could possibly have motive to fudge a few calls in the games that are just entirely there's no excuse for missing them. Someone put together on Twitter a whole 2-minute montage of holding calls and pass interference penalties and face masks and you name it, against the Bengals that were not called. And so I just, while I think that you need to play a game, right, that it doesn't leave things up to the refs, I think that there is a certain point where you're playing the game that you can't overcome the cards being stacked against you, right? Where, on that play, that last play where I think, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but there was a roughing the passer call. Yeah. Joseph Osai. Roughing the passer call. There was 2 holds that before that should have been called on the Chiefs. And so, I think that, obviously, not taking anything away from the Chiefs, they won. They played a great season. And they had a great game, but there was a lot of help for them by the refs, and I don't think that you can deny that. It's in much in the same way that there was honestly just atrocious refereeing, with the NFC Championship. And something that's slightly concerning for the Super Bowl is the fact that the head referee has called the most penalties of any referee ever in playoff history. So it's just something needs to be done in terms of quality control, and Pat McAfee was talking about this on his show. Shout out, Pat McAfee and Aaron Rodgers Tuesday. But, they were talking about what needs to be done for quality control of referees, and, I just kind of agree with, his takes, on that, where there needs to be more screening and more accountability, because, to be a fan of either the NBA or the NFL and listen to the 2-minute report, or, have statements come out afterwards that say, yes, we missed these calls in the last 2 minutes. We missed these calls, throughout the game. That's just rubbing salt in the wound, and that's not doing anything. You can acknowledge it afterwards, but unless you do something to fix it, you're not really going to make people trust or want to watch your product more, than they are. Just because, it was bad enough that it was trending on Twitter. And I understand that everyone was kind of on the Bengals train, and I think I agree with you, Ethan, where I think that's obnoxious. I think it's obnoxious when the mayor of Cincinnati comes out and demands a paternity test for the Chiefs. I think that was ridiculous and way too cocky, and I think the Bengals, honestly, as a Bengals fan, as an Ohio guy, I think they deserved to lose after that, because that was just a trashy move on their part and, just stupid and classless. But that being said, I do think there were a lot of issues with the reffing, and I just hope that we get a Super Bowl product where it doesn't come down to refereeing and that we just have a good Super Bowl game, because if we see, something like what happened to the Saints in the championships, a few years ago, or something like that again, it's just this has happened so consistently, and that's one of the reasons I don't think the NFL is rigged, is just because this is a consistent problem that we have year after year, and people have amnesia and forget about it. But I think that you need to you can't take another year and just not address that. And then NBA, I think, did a good job of that this year. There's still some issues there, but I think the NFL can take a page out of it.
Here's my thing. A lot of what you just said, I agree with pretty much all of it. Like, I agree. Like I said, pretty much everything that you said. Like, the biggest issue is the officiating. The NFL is obviously not rigged. The amount of people and money that would have to be in on that whole thing, and no one to keep it. Like, how many people do you know that if you told them a secret like the NFL is rigged, they'd be able to keep it for the rest of their lives? Maybe 3 people on the fucking planet would be able to do that. That's not. So I agree, the NFL's not rigged. What is a potential, and I don't think it's the case yet, and I'll get into my reasons why, is specific refs being paid to make certain calls, because like you said with the sports gambling thing getting big online, that's becoming a big piece of the revenue.
Yeah.
The thing is, only 17 states allow sports gambling. There's going to be a day in the next few years where 40-plus states allow it. The whale will be much bigger at that point. If you're going to start fixing games, they're going to do it then, not now. They're not going to blow the lid on the whole thing now when they can make quadruple what they're doing now on it. But the officiating is just bad. I mean, I agree there were some bad calls on the Chiefs. But where I will go against some of what you said and what was on Twitter is there was a lot of bad calls on a lot of no calls on the Bengals too. And that's just what not gets showed on Twitter, because it's not the narrative of the NFL's rigged, Chiefs won, all that bullshit. Because Patrick Mahomes is at a situation now where Tom Brady was a few years ago, where everyone will just say anything they can to say he's cheating and should not be winning. But so there are just more eyes on him. There was a specific moment towards the beginning of the game where there was a bad call by the refs. The Bengals they had thrown their challenge flag to challenge the play. The refs just gave it to him and gave him back their challenge flag. That's stupid. I agree that, like, if you made a bad call, whatever, give them the challenge flag back. But that is something that does not happen, where like, the refs just give a team their challenge flag back because they agreed they were correct. So there were times where the officiating was swung in favor of the Bengals. And I'm okay with it in certain circumstances like that, where it's like, it was an egregious call, it shouldn't cost them a challenge flag. But you also got to take into account that doesn't happen with other teams at all. Like, that happens with them, and when was the last time they gave a challenge flag back and still gave them the call? It doesn't happen, right? Yeah. So there are calls on both sides. You can, like, watch videos where, like, holding calls happen and PI happens, but it's a matter of these are humans, and they're watching the game at an eye level like we are, and they don't see it from the camera perspective that we do, unless they make every single play reviewable, which is going to make the game take 6 hours. That's not something that's going to really be fixed. My solution is to make the refs full-time, because the referees are not full-time in the NFL. What they need to be doing is they go full-time, and then during their off-season, they go through training camps like players do. They get time off, a couple months during the off-season, but they go through training camps like the players do, because then they get to study up more on how to make certain calls, how to view certain things, how to make sure they're watching both sides of the video at the same time, all of that stuff. And then it also would lead less of an incentive to be paid off if that's what's happening, because they're full-time instead of part-time or contracted employees. But I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, though, where I would disagree with that take is just that didn't necessarily influence the game specifically as much as that last missed holding call did, because if there's holding on the offense and then there's roughing the passer afterwards, those penalties could offset, or they could have had a 5-yard penalty, rather than a 15-yard penalty, or it would have been a replay of the down, or, something along those lines, and it wouldn't have been the 15-yard penalty that set them in perfect field goal range for Harrison Butker to go win the whole thing, right? That was tangibly changing the outcome of, what could have happened in the game had that not.
I do feel like that Patrick Mahomes was smart on that play, and that Osai had to react that way because he didn't know whether Mahomes was going to continue to stay in bounds or not. Mahomes running on the sideline right as Osai is about to come in. steps out, gets that 15-yarder. I feel like Mahomes was smart, drew the penalty, knew what was going to happen. A wee bit of theatrics, but
that's another thing that you could get into too. Is the soccerification of American football and of basketball, where you're having these players, right, like Steph Curry or Kyle Kuzma or Luka Doncic or LeBron or people like what Patrick Mahomes did, right, where they are going into these games and knowing if they do certain things, then the refs will react a certain way. And I don't think that you should be able to draw penalties like that. I think they need to be actual penalties, and if you shoot the ball and then hit, say in basketball, you're shooting a three, I bump into you afterwards, that's then called a foul. I think that's ridiculous because that was you initiating the contact. That wasn't the defensive player's fault. And same thing, not just for that, but for the roughing the passer calls that we see week in and week out, where it's a totally normal tackle on the quarterback, and then it's called roughing the passer just because you have to protect the quarterbacks. It's like, why aren't you protecting the corners? Why aren't you protecting the wide receivers when they get totally laid out, when the quarterback puts them over the middle? Like Zach Wilson did on the Jets, right? When you have people like running backs or whatever who get absolutely walloped and take more of a beating than the quarterback ever does, and they're not being protected. It's just in my opinion, it's a show to make people, because it's an inherently violent sport, and I think that the people that are playing know what they're getting into, and you can't keep pretending to make all these player safety changes that don't really do anything and just make the game less fun to watch. Because let's face it, nobody wants to watch a game where it comes down to, I can, and correct me if I'm wrong, I can remember at least 7 or 8 games this season where it came to the last few plays. I think there was one with the Vikings. I think there was one with the Giants.
That's every Vikings game, bro.
Yeah, where it comes down to roughing the passer, right? And there was a Falcons-Bucks game for the lead of the division at that point. Yeah.
No one wants to watch a game where it comes down to not who is the better team, but what quarterback sold it more and got more upset at the referees because they didn't call roughing the passer on a routine tackle.
Yeah, here's what I'll say.
I will say.
So just real quick, John, and then I'll let you go. With I agree the officiating was not very good in the Bengals-Chiefs game, but I don't think that affected the outcome of the game, because the roughing the passer call at the end was definitely roughing the passer. That wasn't a bad call by the ref, whether Patrick Mahomes drew it out or not. I think he probably did a little bit, like you said, John. But that was roughing the passer, and that was fair. The holding call that there's definitely a claim to be made that that should have been holding on the Chiefs, but certain things like that happen every single play. You're grabbing someone. It's just a matter of how egregious it is for the refs to call it, because they can't call holding on every single play, even though there is holding on nearly every play. The other ones that I want to address, because there were a few specific ones that people got mad about, but none of them affected the outcome of the game. For starters, that third down that the Chiefs just were given an extra of, if you watch the wide angle, that ref ran onto the field before the play started and blew his whistle, but they played anyway because they didn't hear it. They didn't convert anyway with that extra third down, so that didn't matter. Then the one where they called holding that same drive to give the Chiefs another chance, they didn't convert then either, so that didn't matter. The one where they, quote, missed the roughing the passer on Joe Burrow because there was a hand on his chest, I don't think that was roughing the passer. He hit him as he threw the ball, but the hand hit him after, so maybe roughing the passer. But Joe Burrow also completely flopped because he high-fived his chest basically, and Joe Burrow threw himself back in the ground 6 feet. Maybe that was a missed call, but either way, they converted on that next down anyway, so it didn't really matter. A lot of these calls that were maybe missed or bad calls, yeah, maybe they were missed or bad calls, but it didn't affect the outcome of the game at all, because if it was going to give them a free first down, they got it anyway, or if it was going to give them a free first down when they shouldn't have gotten one, they didn't get it anyway. And so it didn't really affect what happened on any of these drives. It was bad officiating, yes, but it didn't affect the outcome of the game. What affected the outcome of the game was Joe Burrow throwing 2 interceptions and giving the Chiefs that many extra chances on offense. Because there was times where they got 3rd and 9 drive where they got the extra chances. The Bengals got the ball back with a perfect amount of time to go down and score and then win the game and then just run the clock out. They didn't do it. That was bad offense by the Bengals and good defense by the Chiefs. And so I think that people, even if there is bad officiating, need to take into account whether or not it actually affects the game before you start saying that there needs to be some sort of issue change. And like, yeah, there needs to be, but it's like, if it didn't affect the outcome of the game, then like you can get mad about it, but in the context of like the officiating needs to be better, not the game is rigged and all this other stuff, because that's not what happened and it didn't affect the outcome of the game. And so there's a certain level of anger that needs to come with one versus the other, because if it changes the outcome of the game, by all means, that's up in arms, especially in an AFC Championship game where everyone needs to be demanding something happen. But when it doesn't do that, it's just, okay, let's figure something out for next season for the officiating, because clearly what's happening isn't correct. Go ahead, Gian.
Yeah, no, I was just honestly just ditto what you said. I was going to mention the roughing the passer call on Burrow, but like you said, at the end of the day, both teams had a roughly an equal amount of time with the ball and opportunities to score, whether the opposing defense stopped them or not. At the end of the day, yes, referees need to be better, but I would argue at the end of the day, the teams needed to show who was the better team, and at the end of the day, that was the Chiefs. The Chiefs won it out. They made use of what they got, and they finished it off. So, sorry, Frank, that the Bengals couldn't win, but they still got next year, buddy.
Yeah, they got next year. Against the Chiefs dynasty. 5 straight AFC Championship games, 3 Super Bowl appearances, 3 of the last 4 years. They're in the Super Bowl. Can't touch the Chiefs, can't touch Patrick Mahomes. Isaiah Pacheco, absolute dog. You can't touch him. Chiefs on top, baby. Sorry to rub it in, Frank. I just sorry.
It's going to be Dolphins.
Hey, listen, I'm a Browns fan, so I mean, either way, it's not a huge deal. But you know, I mean, as a Browns fan, like the same thing happened to us, 3 years ago when we were playing against the Chiefs in the divisional round. And we just got absolutely screwed on that play. And I honestly think the Browns would have made it to the Super Bowl had that, play not been called the way that it was. And,
that's definitely an argument.
Nobody's crying over spilled milk. But, I think that the NFL, just overall, and I was saying this earlier in the season, so it's not just me having an issue with this game. Right. The reffing it's been atrocious this season.
Yeah,
and I was complaining about those roughing the passer calls where it's like nobody. I think it might have even been the first podcast that we did where I was like, no one wants to watch this. It doesn't make the game fun. It makes fan bases just miserable, right? Now, Browns fans are miserable anyways, right? Because we just suck. But when you have a great team, I would argue, right, that you're behind Baker Mayfield and you have a chance to do something historic like that. And, and that's why I would say the NFL isn't rigged, because if it was rigged, then the Browns, I think, would have gotten into it that year, because that would have been huge, right, if the Browns made the Super Bowl. But when you lose out on an AFC championship, right, because of a bad call, when you lose out on making it to the Super Bowl because of, a bad call like that, or, even during the season, right, those calls add up and they affect, different teams and the shaping overall of the NFL. And I just, again, no use beating a dead horse. I think that
I'll ditto that.
Really needs to be changed.
Because I watched that Browns-Chiefs game, and that was a horrible no call, or that was a horrible call by the fumble in the end zone, whatever stupid bullshit they said it was not. Yeah. And they lost the game because of that. And the Chiefs went to the Super Bowl that year. So there's definitely a case to be made that the Browns would have gone on if they had beaten the Chiefs there, but there's that bad call. There was the Nola no call that you referenced earlier. If those of you have never seen it, look up Nola no call, N-O-L-A. It was the Rams-Saints NFC Championship game a few years ago. Yeah. The most blatant, horrible pass interference call you will ever see.
Egregious.
No call at all, and that cost him the game. So there's been bad officiating for a long time. It's not like it's a new issue, and I feel like whenever people talk about it, they talk about it like it's a new issue, and like, oh, just because they're rigging it now and they haven't done that before. It's like, no, you can look back every single year, every single playoff. There's like a really bad call that people can say, this is why we lost this year, this is why this happened. But it's always, and I understand there's human error, but make the refs full-time and give them more training, because like that's a very simple thing. The NFL's making an assload of money. It's not like they can't afford to make these refs full-time. It just takes a little bit off the top line, which I understand is not...
They're making billions of dollars off of one game a year.
Yeah,
right?
like I understand,
Bowl,
like you don't want to just spend needless money, but like whenever it makes the product better, you will get more eyes on the product. So it's an investment. People get less mad at you. People will bet more often, because if there's people that legitimately think the NFL is rigged, they're not going to bet on it. And that's, if your future of making money is getting sports gambling legalized in all these states, you need people to participate. And if you have things that lead you to believe that it's rigged, people aren't going to do that. So
and the NFL also wants to expand into Europe, and that's something that Goodell has said.
Let's save that for this off season, because that's a good topic we can talk about anytime. I am so against expanding into the European market.
I agree. I agree with you there. But I'm just saying, if they want to expand their product,
Spanish football team,
no one wants to watch something that they think is rigged. People in Cleveland, I am among the people in Cleveland. I am one of the people in Cleveland. Gian and Ethan, you are the people in Georgia, in Florida, and you talking to other fans, right? Talking to just regular people. They hate watching games where they feel like the refs are against them, and whether that's legitimate or not, there needs to be more done by the NFL to address that, because it's getting to like new proportions. Like in 2008, this wasn't as big of a problem as it is now.
Right.
In 2010, people weren't having issues like this, and
it's as they've made new rules to protect players more. Like, they got a lot more strict about being able to, like, not touch people, especially the quarterback. The officiating's gotten worse. So, yeah, but that's something that's going to be discussion all season, because they're going to have to do something now, because it's gotten to, I think, a boiling point where, like, literally everyone is up in arms about the officiating being bad.
Right.
But, yeah, that is going to be this offseason. We're going to talk about a lot more free agent signings and coach movings and stuff like that, quarterback trades. We're talking about the expansion into the European division. There's a lot to talk about this offseason, so I'm very excited for that. But for now, we're going to wrap it up, because we're at about an hour.
Yeah.
And next week, we'll be back. We'll talk about our prediction for the Super Bowl. We'll give some props for sports betting. So if you guys want to take our gambling advice,
and then talk about some NBA and All-Star Game weekend type stuff. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And then let us know if you guys are interested in watching anything to do with UFC, because we have possibly a very special guest making an appearance on the show. So a little tease for you guys there. Stay tuned.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching. Beautiful people. I love you. Gian, close us off.
We love you. Stay frosty, my friends.